A lot of data have been collected at the country level. As we have seen, they should be used as much as possible, but to rely on a single data source is often not enough because of reliability issues. International estimates that gather all the different data sources can be used as a more reliable reference, and we are going to discuss this in this session.
Global statistics are created through typically 4 steps. The first one is to gather all the information, all the different sources of data. As an example, for the childmortality.org, we gather over 3,000 studies. The second step is to make sure that all the data are comparable, and in this case to make sure for the definitions, for the different type of measures, that all of these different sources are harmonized. So as an example, for registration data, that if the data are available for different years, like the year that the event occurred compared to the year that the event was registered, all of this needs to be documented and taken into account in the analysis. The third step is to check the quality of the information and, for example, to what extent a survey is nationally representative. The fourth step is to eventually fill in for missing data. Unfortunately, quite often the latest available data are several years ago, or in some cases there are big gaps between different years. So using different techniques, we eventually fill in these gaps in information. Now, let's look at several of the major sources of international demographic estimates, especially for mortality and health statistics. One of the first examples that I would like to show you is from UNICEF and a consortium of organizations with WHO, the World Bank, and the UN, that is called childmortality.org. The second one that I would like to show you is from the United Nations. It's a set of estimates and projections for all the countries of the world, and it's called the World Population Prospects. And finally, a third one that is a good complement to these 2 sources is from the World Health Organization, where you can find global health statistics for all the countries of the world, covering both demographic issues, but especially health issues. Here, let's look at 3 examples of countries. The first one is a country like Canada, where you have a good registration system that gives you every year some information. And as you can see, over the years, you have only one source of data that is very consistent, very coherent from one year to the next one. The second one is a country like Laos, where we have much less information. There is no registration data available, only surveys, and the information from one survey to the next survey eventually are quite different. So there is the need really to take into account not just one source of information, but all of them, and to try to get a more meaningful trend over time between all these sources. And a third example would be for a country like the Philippines, where you get also many surveys, but in addition you get registration data, in this case vital statistics year after year since the 1980s in the Philippines. But as you can see, they are very different from the survey data. And in this case, you need to take into account, again, not just one source of information, but all of them, and to evaluate one against the others. The other website that I would like to show you is from the United Nations, the Population Division website dedicated to a specific dataset called the World Population Prospects, where different sources of information are used to create estimates for all the countries of the world. And here we are going to look at the interactive online database. And we can go through a list of different summary indicators on population, fertility, mortality, but we are going to specifically look at adult mortality between age 15 and 60. and the probability of dying within these ages. And we are going to select this indicator. We are going to select a couple of countries, in this case Thailand, and another country like South Africa. And we are going to select a couple of years from, let's say, 1990 to recent years like 2020, because we also have some projections. And we are going to look only at the male, since earlier we have mentioned that men experience some excess mortality. And we get these results that we can browse on the screen, or we can export to Excel. So here we can export this into a file, go to Excel, and look at these results. So for example, in the 1980s, we have some relatively high male mortality in South Africa, higher than in Thailand, and we can plot this kind of information, and visually here you can see how the male mortality in Thailand and in South Africa has changed over the last several decades. Especially in the case of South Africa with the HIV/AIDS epidemic, there was a substantial increase in male mortality, and then in recent decade a decline with various improvements and access to treatment also. So all of these data are easily accessible, publicly available, and you can yourself access the website and get all this information.